Welcome to All Wheel Driven, a podcast by Audi Club North America, where we explore all things Audi and the incredible people who bring it to life. All Wheel Driven is presented by XPEL, the official paint protection film of Audi Club. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of All Wheel Driven. I am your host, Joe Kaczynski. Each episode, we dive into the latest Audi headlines, offering both a recap and our perspective of the stories that are shaping the brand. Today's episode, we're going to focus on the Audi Formula One program, key takeaways from the early season so far, what we can expect going forward. I'm joined today by Aaron Plant. He's an Audi Motorsport representative and an F1 analyst. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Great to be here. I would caveat that I'm a self-made analyst, so don't get to attend every race, don't get to fly around the world, but I can play one at home. I went to a Holiday Inn Express.
Fantastic. That works for us. So, Aaron, if you don't mind, giving us a little bit more of your background, your affiliation with Audi Club, and what led you here.
Yeah, so I've been with Audi Club since I moved to Texas. So around. Affiliated with the brand at least around till 2010, and then really got into the local chapter around 2012, which was right around when COTA was built here. So really lucky to have moved here and then been able to, I literally picked my seats at the track before the track was built. I walked in a pile of dirt and said, "This is where I want to be." Turned 15.
Wow.
And
nice.
So I got to do that while being an Audi enthusiast. And so I started there and actually got active into the club. We've kind of reformed the Texas chapter, which is known affectionately as Lone Star, and served on the board there, and then had the opportunity to serve on the national board right around when the LMP cars, Audi Sport Team Yost, was coming in to do the 6-hour Lone Star Le Mans. And so timing was really beautiful, and we hosted the 30th ACNA event, and was really proud to be part of that. And then after that, kind of moved into the journalism part of it and wrote for Quattro, and I've been doing that really since then. And having a blast. So no administrative duties anymore. I just get to write some articles, and I'm also author of the Rear Spoiler column. So if you've read the last page of the magazine and my ramblings, then you know a little bit about what I think of the brand and motorsports, etc.
Awesome, fantastic. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks again for joining us. So let's go ahead and jump into our main topic today, which again is Audi in Formula One, their inaugural season, 2026. It's a good time to join with so many regulation changes and so forth. So if any new join team's going to join, 2026 is as good a year as any. They took over, as a customer team, which was Stake F1 team Kick Sauber, which is still goes down as one of my favorite or least favorite F1 team names in history. So if nothing else, they've got a better name now. But they had said kind of starting the season that, their expectations were to compete for championships in 2030. They weren't didn't expect to come out of the gate and top step of the podium right away. What do you think of that? What's been your reaction when you heard Audi was going to enter F1 and kind of your early thoughts, when you heard the news and how that's kind of started in these early stages?
Well, obviously great excitement, right? Especially being here with COTA, when the Lone Star Le Mans, when Audi pulled out of the Le Mans race series, it was really, we got used to having a big presence here annually, and then all of a sudden there was kind of nothing. Audi really reduced its kind of footprint in total and from a racing motorsport perspective, and it was really just GT cars that they kind of competed with, which are really privateers. So on the US side at least. So it was sad to see them go. So hearing that Audi was coming back into motorsports, into the pinnacle of motorsports, whether you or me as a genuine Audi fan thinks, most of us have a love of the prototype series. So in some ways, I would say that's still my pinnacle. But in terms of the rest of the world, F1 is certainly the pinnacle of motorsports. And so having them come back here was pretty fantastic news. So I know like I'll get an opportunity to see them at COTA at least. Maybe we'll do the Canadian Grand Prix. For me, it was extra special because I had been a Sauber fan since, I'm going to say the late 90s, early 2000s. I actually had the opportunity to go to Hinwil and tour the factory when it was just Sauber. So it was, it was after BMW left Sauber, and when they had their independence before the, I guess it was after that Alfa Romeo technically, yep. and then Stake. So Sauber's been tossed around quite a bit, but they're a great team. I love their core value set, and so I've always been a fan of Sauber, regardless of what other gobbledygook was before or after that name. And so for me to have Audi be the one to take over that team was just fantastic. On top of it, I think it was a smart move for Audi because Sauber, while they have been a middle of the pack team for quite some time, they are a middle of the pack team. And so with that comes a lot of baked in strategy, a lot of tribal knowledge. And I think that's part of the answer to why they were able to score points in the first race, why they've been right on the bubble to be able to score points, finishing 11th in the other two races. And so in some ways it shouldn't be a surprise. And we have to give credit to the kind of the historical value that Sauber brings, along with the diligence, the professionalism, and the motorsports focus kind of core brand that Audi brings right to anything, the Vorsprung der Technik kind of ideology. And so that's a great combination. So in some ways, I'm not surprised that they're sitting healthy in the middle of the pack. But I don't think we should take away what that means, because getting those two teams together, creating a new culture around that is a huge undertaking.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So as we're recording this here in early April, we're 3 races in. A little bit of unplanned break is occurring right now with the 2 races being canceled due to world events. So the team's got about 5 weeks to plan. The interesting thing is it is a break from racing action, but unlike the kind of the summer break, the teams are allowed to work on their cars, run the wind tunnels, all that stuff that normally is shut down during those planned summer breaks. So Audi and everybody else will continue to work. But getting back to the first 3 races, they started off solid with a couple points in race 1, and like you said, just kind of right on that bubble, just a little bit of maybe some bad luck or some things bouncing the wrong way for them. Could have scored some more points. My preseason prediction was them finishing around P8 or so. I figured they would have no problem finishing ahead of Cadillac and Aston, who are both really struggling. And then I thought maybe they could sneak in ahead of another team of 2, maybe Williams and so forth. I think they've got the pace for it. What's been your takeaway, on those first 3 races, watching them and seeing this team, kind of go at it with the R26 turning these wheels in anger for the first couple of weeks?
Yeah. So if I think of it from the perspective of, I'll say a business for lack of a better term, but what, setting expectations coming into the, your new calendar year. I think, honestly, to me, they fell exactly where I would have hoped if I was coming in running that team, which was to say Melbourne was less about points and more about proof of life. Like, can we do this? And so they actually did get points on the board. So to me, they were kind of ahead of schedule. They weren't able to get 2 cars on the track. We had a DNS, not even a DNF. And so I think that's just part of the process. They arrived not as a concept, but kind of as a branding exercise. Here we are. This is our debutante ball. As a functioning F1 operation, under the stress of a season opener, I think that means a lot. And so they still had some good presence in qualifying. I thought it was interesting that Boratella did better than Hulkenberg, and in some ways kind of still continues. We did see Hulk come out in race 3 here, and honestly, like I guess we'll talk about it when we get to Japan. But from P19 to P11, that tells a lot about what they were able to do between Melbourne and Japan. So, coming out of the gate, I think it was great so I followed this race really closely because I was writing about it, and I was actually tracking interval times for each lap. And so the beginning of the race was the normal chaos that you have with this new start and getting the batteries charged and this whole thing. Like, everybody's trying to figure this out. So it was pretty chaotic. I didn't, I expected them to kind of fall back and have to figure it out. But I think they did a fantastic job. Like, mid-race in Melbourne is where you could really start to see Boratella get going. And I was watching these intervals and how he was rapidly approaching the mid-pack, and then was able to get some fights in and really quickly kind of secure that points position, and then get able to P9 by the end of it and get 2 points. I don't know what the team expected, but to me, that was a pleasant surprise, right? So we only had one car, but we got it out. And so I think, I would have called that a win for them. And so, to sum up, like, what do I say about Melbourne? The first true test of Audi's Works Air operation was complete. New rules meant even veteran teams were guessing, so they kind of had that advantage because everybody was starting from scratch to a certain extent. And Audi's job wasn't to win; it was to learn without being embarrassed, and I think they achieved that. And again, we know Audi as a brand; their composure mattered more than whatever headline pace that, hey, we're a real team, we're here to compete, and we're gonna figure this out. So to me, the most telling thing was, whether they look lost. And they did not. They looked like they had the act together. They were a real team, and they were there to do some business.
That was so. That was round 1. Round 2 came to China, and the first sprint race of the year. Little tough luck, with the Audi team in the sprint race. But what were your main takeaways in from China race?
Yeah, I was actually, out of the 3, probably most disappointed here because it felt like we'd have momentum built from Melbourne, and the whole concept there was by race 2, the honeymoon's over already, and you're no longer new, so you're now just another guy in the field, and so in my mind, they had something more to prove, and it was a useful story because Audi started to look less like a debutante, more like a team with identified strengths and weaknesses. And so what were they? We were beginning to see, or we continued to see, trouble off the grid. Now, again, they're not alone in this, but figure out how to get out of the starting line when the lights go out and maintain their position, I think is probably the number one thing that they're focused now during this break. So to me, like, that angle was Melbourne, you introduced yourself, and China, you really started revealing what your habits were. And so the good things were the car has a quick pace. They can be competitive. The pit stops were all good, like that, leveraging the Sauber tribal knowledge. You could see that come to play in the pits. So we're kind of good on all those basics. And I think the biggest thing they were looking for is reliability in the car and the ability to get off that start line and at least maintain your position. And honestly, for the latter, at least, I don't think that's a unique challenge for Audi. I think half the grid is trying to figure this out still. So if I'd summarize China, I'd say, the early signs, the car could live in the midfield and continues to. The pace looks credible. It wasn't like a one and done, or there was an accident. They figured out how to leverage the battery gas combo. They had sharpness that still felt like a half step behind of what they could, but nevertheless, there was still some forward momentum. So to me, China was a pattern that Japan later confirmed, which is they're not dramatically off pace. It's leaving results on the table, though, because we can't execute on that launch.
And then, of course, after China, we had a bit of a surprise, which we can dive into a little more later on. But so Jonathan Wheatley, there was rumors first that he was maybe going to step down and swap positions and take over at Aston Martin. And we had saw rumors of that, and we decided, we're not going to report on that because it just sounds kind of outlandish, and until something's confirmed, we don't want to get into the rumor game. Then sure enough, 2 days later, it was confirmed, at least that Wheatley would be stepping down for personal reasons. Not necessarily that he'll be joining Aston Martin, but we'll see. So that is how we go into Japan. So how do you think, given some of the distraction around that and going into the third race of the year, how do you think Japan went for the Audi team?
Big win for Japan was both cars started and finished. I mean, honestly, we got to give some props there because that was the first time we were able to do that. They were able to do that. We like to think in our fandom voice that we're armchair pit crewing, but I think they validated by the third race that they are a midfield competitor. And again, I think the biggest regret there for them was the start, because if you watched qualifying, they were very competitive in qualifying. Like Hulkenberg was right on the edge of getting the 10 spot going to the Q3. So I think, that was a disappointment, but they said, okay, we've got some pace. And honestly, my hope was at the start is Hulkenberg would do Hulkenberg and actually gain spots during the first lap. And instead, the opposite happened, right? They had trouble with the start, and he ended up in P19, but was able to get to P11 by the end of the race. So to me, that race was all about endurance, in terms of, focusing on, okay, here's where we started. It's not where we thought we'd be, and we're gonna fight through it. The other interesting thing was there was, as there has been in every race, as they're kind of as the whole F1 paddock is trying to figure out how to leverage the new ratio between the battery and the engine. There's a lot of guys who are, they're running out of steam, and you see this, and you can even see it like on the straights. You'll even hear the engine just begging for more power as it's using the reserve from the what is it, 45-55% distribution between battery and the V6. I think that's kind of painful for viewers. It's painful for the drivers. It's painful for the team. And I think we can talk about later during the break, but there's some things that I've done research on, that maybe some rule changes that may help with that by the time we get to Miami. But anyway, my point is there was a lot of back and forth. Hulkenberg and Bortella switched spots a couple times. And so we were again, by the end of the race, as like doing the interval math. And it's like we needed a few more laps, and I think they would have actually grabbed that 10 spot away. I can't recall who we were fighting, if it was Racing Bulls or Red Bull, but I think it was one of those. And so where do we go from here, I think, is the important question, because they now know after 3 races what to work on. Hopefully both of them finishing is a signal that there's a reliability improvement. And then now it's all about figuring out how to get that start and then maintaining the pace after that.
Going back to what you said earlier, one of the big takeaways for me is they do look like they belong, right? They, like you go back to last year, Ferrari certainly looks stronger this year, but the last couple of years, they've been doing Formula One longer than anybody. And boy, they look like they didn't have a clue, with their pitch strategies and so forth. So it's not easy, right? It's not easy to do. It's easy for us to talk about, on Monday morning, but it's not easy in the heat of the moment. So to see the Audi team out there, and I hope I'm not jinxing them, but to be pretty solid from a strategy perspective is certainly encouraging. Just a few races in, and like you said, if they could figure out some of these starts. They'll be fighting for points every week.
It reminds me of the phrase, race Sunday, sell Monday. It's the different version is Audi needs to focus on making Saturday's reliable efforts, a apply on Sunday. It's that same ideology. It's like they're doing great on Saturday, figuring out how to manage the energy differences and really get a good qualifying lap. And then on Sunday, once the lights go out, the lights go out, and we have to make sure that they can get off the grid well.
For sure, yeah. I'm tired of seeing the red downward arrow next to the Audi. Right, exactly. So you talked about the while we're on the subject. You talk about the new regulations a little bit, right? And the speed differentials that you see. Sometimes it's we think was may have been responsible for the crash that happened in Japan, right? And which was pretty serious shunt, right? So, and a lot of it was that speed differential. Like, what are your thoughts so far on these regulations, and what do you think maybe they can look at to make everything still, exciting or more exciting, but safer as well?
Yeah, I've done research and been paying attention to this to see what the talking heads are saying about it. I think there's definitely a lot of frustration on the grid. I mean, some of the drivers are fine with it, or they've kind of figured most of it out, and so they're more comfortable. Others are kind of pitching a fit. Probably depends on where you finished last year versus there seems to be I won't name names, but a direct correlation between, or inverse correlation between where you ended last year and where you are now. But that whining aside, I think there is, with new rules comes change, and you've got to figure things out, and that's part of the magic. I equate it to baseball. 2 years ago, they changed the rules. I actually enjoy baseball a lot more since as a fan. So I think it's the same attempt to try to make the sport more enjoyable for fans. I mean, it's a revenue generating machine, so that's the goal. So you got to respect that. I do think they're taking the opportunity over the break to come back with some things, and so based on I guess the prevailing winds, I would say it sounds like there's 3 things they're working on to try to kind of improve. And before I put the cart before the horse, I think to answer your question, there's a lot. The main problem is around managing the battery against the speed, like losing the speed or gaining this speed in tremendous ways. I don't think the actual DRS replacement wings, I don't think that's as big of an issue. I think there's some challenges around it, but I think most of it's around the battery. And so it's the qualifying versus race story. Even in qualifying, there's a lot of complaints from the teams that because they have to manage this battery and do the super clipping and all of these other things to try to recover some of that energy. There's a lot of friction in the field, and I think legitimate concerns about danger, and that the crash, the Haas crash, was. I'm pretty sure they've determined it's directly related to this energy usage or misusage, the drivers behind don't expect them to slow down. The drivers in front to slow down as much as they are, and so he overcorrected just to avoid a collision. And I think that's happening a lot on the track. We only see it when it ends the way it ended for Haas, but it's happening all over the place, and I think that's where a lot of the friction is. And so from what I've read, the 3 areas where we may come out in Miami with a improved solution, or something that FIA is changing the rules on, which again I think they should be flexible and should take this season to make some adjustments, is increasing the super clipping harvest so drivers can recover energy while still flat out. So right now they can harvest energy by lifting and coasting, and then staying full throttle. And the proposed fix would be to raise the super clipping harvest from 250 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts, so they could match the lift and coast. And that should make for a less ugly option. It should reduce the amount of kind of awkward backing off on the straights and cut down on that dangerous close speed differences. And so it should make qualifying look less like an energy accounting exercise. And I think that's the complaint that most of the drivers are. It's like, we're not racing, we're managing our battery power pack. And that's not fun. And I think that's a legitimate concern. The second one, I think, is reducing or reshaping the battery deployment so the cars stop running out of electrical shove at the end of the straights. And so this is it's. I wrote it down because I can't. It's counterintuitive to me, so I have to actually. So I apologize for reading, but they actually it's counterintuitive because that'll result in actually the cars being slower, but it's going to make them more racy and natural to drive. And so the idea would be to smooth that battery deployment over more of the straight. So rather than dumping too much energy early, and they're starving at the end of the straight, they'll lower that maximum NJUK deployment from like current peak level and ramp it down and ramp it down and ramp it down in, whatever time frame, and in like kind of 25% increments. And that should make the ramp down more aggressive earlier, and the ramp down should actually start at a lower speed, so they can get to that threshold faster. So less kind of top end fade with the engine note falling off a cliff. And you'll see, like, if you go online, you can see these clips of they're going out, and then you just hear the engine running out of steam. It's embarrassing. So that should help reduce that. And then the last big change that is likely to happen is cutting that maximum recharge allowed per lap, so drivers can recover energy under more normal braking instead of having to force these weird lift and coast things that they've been doing. And so right now the limit's 9 megajoules per lap. In Suzuka, they actually lowered it to 8. I didn't know that when I was watching the race. And then the proposal is to reduce it possibly to 6 or at least to 7. And the logic is that if the recharge target's lower, then the drivers can hit those normal braking zones instead of doing all that straight energy hoarding behavior that's causing this, this pausing, this kind. I don't know. I call it the herky jerky kind of motion. The downside is slower lap times, but the trade-off is more conventional, traditional driving and racing and attacking. And I think, as a fan, I'm all for that. I think there's still going to be enough excitement left with the changes that they have made. That it's, I do enjoy the constant overtaking. So I don't want that to go away. But this will be, I think, these 3 things would add to a safer opportunity to do that. I think the driver delight will be higher, and in that way, the customer delight, us, would be higher. So those are the 3 things that they're working on. There's the other thing that they're working on, but I don't think will happen, is allowing them to use the DRS replacement anywhere on the track instead of just in those certain zones. So I don't think that'll happen. It may happen in the season, but I don't think it'll happen by Miami. Yeah. That's probably that's as nerdy as I can get on this podcast. Probably.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I mean, F1 is kind of nerdy. You got to get into those details, right? So, no, that's great. I appreciate that insight. And I think we all just want to see close racing and safe racing. And if the overall speeds and the lap times are a little slower, I think that's okay. I know, I've watched, spec Miata races, and I have a blast watching those guys because they're like an inch from each other, chopping it up every lap after lap after lap, and they're slow as hell. They're not fast. But it is super entertaining to watch, if we can get some more natural racing, like I said, like you said, I think the fans would enjoy it, and the drivers would enjoy it too. So it'll be interesting to see what they implement, and everybody's learning in 2026, including the FIA, right? So it's a learning experience, and they've said that they're willing to make some changes. So hopefully they do, and it works out.
Looking forward to Miami and seeing what happens. Absolutely. Both politically and on the grid.
Absolutely. So speaking of changes, we touched on Wheatley's exit a little bit. What was your reaction to that? Did you even think that was a possibility? What was how'd that play out for you?
It was the rumor mill. I saw it probably the same time that Audi Club reported it, actually. And, I don't tend to prescribe much to rumors out of the gate, and so I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. It just seemed like the whole thing seemed odd, still seems odd, quite frankly. I mean, the personal reasons and like wanting to relocate and be in the UK. I mean, you took the job, you knew what it was. I'm not buying that. And then the rumor mill around Aston Martin, while they were having trouble with Newey doing everything essentially, which now is what we're asking Binotto to do. So hopefully this is a short-term thing. It'd be pretty crappy if he ends up there, honestly, to me. Like it's because I had a lot of respect for him and what he's been able to do in F1, and I thought he was a great fit for Audi Revolut F1 team. But this would be, I wouldn't have a high opinion post if that's what happens, and it kind of feels like it to me. Like it's the whatever the open secret. That's what it feels like to me. So happy to be wrong, but if it is, it's not so cool. But I mean, I give Binotto credit. He the F1. He had a quick interview with F1 about this, and it was fresh. I mean, it was literally like 24 hours later, and I think he handled it right. He was honest that the departure was abrupt and unexpected, but it was kind of drama free considering what it is. I mean, it was pretty drama free and professional in the Audi way that I do respect and enjoy. But it clearly landed a bad moment because Audi's biggest weakness is already kind of trackside execution, right? If you think about us getting over the grid, so now we've got no team principal. So I think the most important thing is, and I could feel it in Binotto's comments, was he doesn't want to be the guy. Like, he's not looking to do a Newey thing, right? He's not looking to do that. So hopefully they'll find somebody quickly that can take that mantle. And as long as they do, I think the team will be fine. But obviously it's disruptive, and it's not automatically disastrous, because I think Japan showed that they can still operate as a team and race effectively, right? So hopefully that's how it stays. But I don't subscribe to the idea of, well, yeah, we'll just let one guy do 3 different jobs and everything will turn out fine. Like that will not last. It'll create culture issues. It'll start fraying at the edges, and none of us want any of that, and most of all them, I'm sure. So we'll wait and see what happens in terms of a replacement, but they definitely need one. They're going to want one, and hopefully that's someone who has that same philosophy that can kind of keep the team moving forward.
Do you have any thoughts on who might be in the running for that position? Any ideas?
I don't. Do you? Because I could respond to one, but I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead, honestly.
I mean, I agree with you. I think they need to get somebody in that team principal role sooner than later. But what do you think of in the interim, the leadership style differences between the two, between Wheatley and Binotto?
Very different personalities, right? So Binotto's the quiet. He's probably suggests things, and Wheatley will request things. And so that's where, as a business leader myself, that's where I get nervous, because that it's a very different persona, and it's not fair for Binotto to try to take that persona on. So I think he also has a wide depth and breadth of experience. So I'm not saying he can't effectively do it in this interim, but I think he wants it to be interim. Everybody else needs it to be interim, so that they can find somebody who can kind of maintain that discipline to help the team do what it needs to do to gain spots, gain points.
Sure. So we talked, about our reactions to, the whole season so far versus expectations. How do you perceive the rest of the F1 world kind of reacting to Audi, what they're putting up there so far? Just kind of media overall. it's funny because, when you're in the middle, you kind of get middle child syndrome, right? Like you hear a lot about Aston Martin, you hear a lot about Cadillac, you hear a lot about, Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren, and then not so much from Audi. But what do you think the kind of overall reaction's been to the team so far, very early on?
Not enough from my perspective is kind of that answer. Yeah, I'm frustrated in the same way you are. I watch the pre-race coverage. I watch the qualify. Like I'm watching everything, and I literally start fast forwarding through. It's like, oh, it's all about the top now. It's about the bottom, and it's like then there's literally 2 minutes on the Wheatley departure, or before that it was what did they talk about in Melbourne? I don't even think they interviewed. Oh, they did. They interviewed. I think they interviewed Wheatley, and it was just like, oh, you're here. You're a real team. So you're right. They're definitely suffering coverage. And then, of course, when I'm doing my homework about the team, I'm scouring my normal kind of F1. And again, you just don't get a lot of coverage. They have nothing bad to say. They're like, yeah, they're about where they are. They're doing great stuff. But it ends there because there's no drama. And outside of Wheatley leaving, that's true, and that's actually good. I mean, no drama is equals consistency, and consistency equals results. So I shouldn't complain that they're not getting more coverage. But as an Audi super fan, it's like you want the whole thing to be about them. I get really frustrated watching the race because it's like they're always just about to come on screen when the camera changes. And all of the like I'm like I told you, I'm literally watching the race through the interval, so I could just have that 1/8 of the screen on the left, and that'd probably be almost as good as what I'm seeing because I'm not even paying attention to the race itself. I'm watching the interval because they're hardly ever on camera. I mean, there's something to be said for that forgotten child because when all of a sudden they end up on the podium, it'll be a big deal. So that's kind of the good news about it. But yeah, a little frustrated. I would have liked to see more. But also, if you think about it, per your comment, like the middle of the pack doesn't get a whole lot of coverage. The guys on the bottom and the top do, and at least they're not on the bottom. So I guess we should take it as a win and not complain.
Exactly. What do you think from a brand perspective? What do you think this will do for Audi just as a brand sales? Do you think it'll have an impact? I mean, the product is what the product is right now, but what do you think Audi F1 will do for the brand itself?
Honestly, I don't know the math for the ROI or how long it takes based on the investment in F1 to actually get a return for Audi. But generally speaking, it can only help. And I'll quantify it in maybe a slightly obtuse way. So after Drive to Survive came out, I have a PSL license at Coda. I go every year. And so with that comes little perks. Like we've got our own kind of tent right next to where our seats are, and you get access to some things. So one year, so I can't remember when Drive to Survive came out. It was a couple seasons after it. So it wasn't like it took a couple seasons to take hold in the zeitgeist. So whenever that was, I don't know, maybe 2020 or somewhere around there, 2021. Anyway, I walked into our pit club area, and it was full of like 16 to 18-year-old girls on a Friday race event. I was like, first of all, what are these people doing my way? And secondly, like, why are there a bunch of kids here? And well, it was because of the concert. I can't remember who was playing, 21 Pilots or something, but it was because of the concert. So they weren't, their back was facing the track. They had nothing to do, like they could care less. And like that, ever since Drive to Survive, Coda's been packed. Overall, it's a good thing for F1, good thing for Coda, but it's packed with people who have they're coming there with a different desire. So some are just watching the concert, so they're kind of mildly entertained by the race. They like to see anything in the paddock, or where you can feel like you can take an Instagram photo. But I think my point is this opens up that audience to Audi in the same way, right? So because now these kids are looking at, and they may go and get the Q5 or they may get a Q3 or whatever, and it might not have been on their radar before because, like it or not, there's a certain there's a certain slice of the audience that buys it because it's cool or it's the thing to get. And they drive AB cars. They could care less, but they'll get an Audi because they saw an Audi on the track. It doesn't even need to win. I mean, honestly, they just want to get the branded jacket and then go, get the Audi. So in that way, I think it'll be overall a net gain for the brand. Like I said, I don't know how long before the ROI flips and they actually, get positive because it's insanely expensive. But I think in that way, it was a good choice. The other thing it does for them is it gives the electric, right? It kind of validates the electric component. And honestly, I like the hybrid idea better. I wish the whole entire automotive industry had just matured hybrid instead of going right to electric, because I think, one, it's the range anxiety that people get. You could avoid a lot of that. I think we could have evolved into electric faster if we had done that. So having this hybrid, power plant, I think is also good for the brand. It helps say, yeah, we're still developing ICE, but we haven't forgotten about electric, and we're still investing in that. So you kind of win both sides of that argument and kind of talk out of both sides of your mouth from a brand perspective.
We're 3 races in, a lot to go. What do you see coming up next? Where do you think? Do you think there's a win in Audi's future this year? Maybe a rainy race, something like that. Rain always likes to throw some chaos out there. Do you think there's a particular track that suits Audi better? What do you think?
Yeah, in terms of which track, I can't tell yet. And honestly, I don't think any team probably has a favorite track anymore, because until they figure this battery consumption recharge thing, I think every track is going to be kind of new to a certain extent. It does seem like any of the straightaway heavy tracks are not going to be as optimal, because that's where the struggle is, and running out of power. And it seems like the more chicanes and S's you have, the more they can kind of use that consumption. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to pick a favorite track in terms of. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season they get to the podium once. Like, to your point, I don't think it'd be conventional. I think it'll be like crazy town out on the track, and they take advantage of it. But it wouldn't shock me, and I do think they'll be able to get into a cadence to get actual points. Like they're going to figure out, because I know. If you think about Audi's heritage, and when they go in to do something, they go in to win. And when I mean win, I don't literally mean year one, first place, right? They manage our expectations to, what did you say, 2030? Yeah. So I don't think that's the expectation, but I do think they will be able to get past this 10, 11 bubble and get to be able to consistently be in the points. And I think if they can end the 2026 season that way, that'll be a win for everyone.
Yeah, agree. Do you agree with their 2030 timelines? That seem realistic for them to maybe compete for the top step?
I think they can do it sooner. I think Audi, again, they're setting. They don't go out in to make this investment and then settle on 2030. I'm sure they gave themselves some room, like akin to with Artemis. 2 having just launched. It was akin to the moon, the race to the moon. It's like they said 1970, but then they rolled it out in 67. So I think it's that. If I were at the boardroom table, I'm sure that's what they did. So I think they can do it sooner, and I think they can do it sooner. And based on what we've seen out of the gate, again, just being able to maintain themselves in the middle pack and be able to touch points tells me that they're probably where they thought they should be right now.
Under promise and over deliver. That's where they're at. Yeah. And I think they're there. So from Audi Club perspective with Formula One, do you see any engagement opportunities with the club and Formula One with Audi? I mean, obviously they're coming to the States soon. Next race will be in the States, and then we'll have a couple more in Vegas and in Austin. What do you see for those races as far as Audi connecting with the club?
I'm hopeful and actively pursuing opportunities to try to encourage that. I think it's just to set expectations personally. I think don't expect the same as we had with the Lodestar Le Mans and the LMS the prototype cars, LMP cars, because it's the way I equate it again. So I keep having lessons from Coda, but that's where I've spent most of my time, and I've because I was there when the track was being built and had a lot of conversations with the people that were involved. F1's the only race where Coda hands the keys to F1. Usually it's the other way around. It's like a race series comes in. It's like, well, here's our rules. Here's what you got to pay this, that, and the other. And when F1 comes in, it's like they give them the keys and they have to ask permission to use their own assets. And so with that as the kind of the benchmark, I think we just have to be fair to manage our expectations. That's like, oh, you're Audi Club. They'll be like, that's cool. General seating is over there type of a thing. So now, yeah, like I said, I'm going to work as hard as I can. And I know Chris and the rest of the team is working hard to try to get opportunities. I think our best way is through the dealerships. So we should really network with the strong dealerships that can bring, a flavor and the taste of F1 into it. Again, with it being in Melbourne, China, and Japan, there's probably very few people in the club who were able to actually see the race live anyway, and so we don't have a benchmark as to what the access opportunities are. But I mean, if Audi was thinking through this and thinking of our audience and kind of the birth of our club coming from motorsports, or at least HPDE, then I would hope they would have some sort of outreach. It's just such an international affair. There's a lot of other complexities, and so it's probably a hard sell year one to get any kind of perks. If you have $10,000, you can get a nice seat in Miami here, but so yeah, I think it'll be a while. But anybody who's listening or has an opportunity connection, then we would love to build a relationship with them. I mean, we've got a rabid fan base. And we buy lots of Audis.
Absolutely. So, Aaron, anything else? Any final thoughts? Anything we didn't touch on yet that you wanted to address from Audi Formula One perspective, or just kind of the brand in general?
I think the biggest thing was thinking is like, what are we going to do over the these 5 weeks? And so we covered that in earnest. But I think, if I had some closing thoughts, I guess they'd be, Audi doesn't need a miracle. It just needs refinement. And that's something that they excel at, right? So I think that the early races suggest that the ingredients there, we've got midfield pace, we've got improving reliability, we've got enough underlying competitiveness that matters. And really what's missing is the unglamorous layer, the one Formula One always punishes the hardest, which is execution, right? When it's absent. If you don't have execution, you're not going to win, be even competitive in F1. So that's why I think this next stretch of weeks, what they learned from those first 3 races, and hopefully some rule changes, will give Audi an opportunity to be able to finish in the points more consistently, get 2 cars in the points, and really start to grow a margin from that, call it, get to the upper middle of the pack. I think that would be a real win for the season. So I think Audi's first 3 races have proven that they're not quite ready for that, but it's also proven that they're relevant. And in year one, I think that's a very different and very important thing. It's all about managing expectations, fans, drivers, team.
Right. Yeah, for sure. No, it's been an interesting start to the season for sure. From just from departures of team principals to cancellation of races to their overall pace and everything else. So it certainly hasn't been boring. And Drive to Survive next season should be pretty interesting, right? Yeah, I mean, No. I was just going to say it is entertainment at the end of the day, as we were saying before, and it's been entertaining.
And at the least, there's two other thoughts I'll leave you with. One, we can thank Audi because I've got Cadillac friends, and we can at least walk around bragging every Monday in work to our Cadillac friends, who, by the way, aren't even powered by Cadillac. And same with Aston Martin. And that's like my big rub with Infinity with Red Bull was always that you've got your logo, you're doing commercials, but you don't even power the car. And I'm so proud that Audi actually it's our power plant, right? It's Audi's power plant. So they're talking the talk. And I know it's all branding and money, but I can't stand when there's some car logo on and the engine's from a completely different brand. I mean, it drives me nuts that they market, that they're an F1 team when it's like, what part of it? Your stickers? Like that's about all you got on that car. So Audi actually has an Audi engine in it. They have a team. They're taking ownership of it, and in that way, as a real constructor, I'm proud to be an Audi fan.
That's true. Yeah, that's an excellent point that I'm surprised it took us so long to get into. But yeah, that's a big part of the Audi team. It is Audi through and through. It's like people buy a Toyota Camry because they see it at a NASCAR race. Be like, hey, look, I drive a NASCAR. No, you really don't. You really don't. But but it is cool to see Audi with Audi power. That is, and it makes their early results that much more impressive, right? So, yeah, absolutely. And anything else, Aaron, that you want to highlight, touch on? Anything you got going on race wise?
Well, I would encourage you guys to check the mailbox for the latest edition of Quattro magazine. We do a F1 focused issue, so there's a lot of great stuff from a lot of fellow contributors. Mine is on the Melbourne race specifically, and what I tried to do there is actually make it feel experiential, even though most of us weren't able to be there, and to really feel what it was like to get again in the mid-race interval and how you felt that tension, and so hopefully you get a good read on that. And it's a great issue packed with some good stuff, and we're looking forward to a good season of racing with F1, and we'll also be heading back to Pikes Peak this year to cover. There'll be not as many Audis as last year, but there'll be a pretty interesting one, the Pikes Peak S1 E2 edition, a tribute car. That is, when I say tribute, it is a exact replica. There's some improvements in the engine and performance and stuff. So we're going to see that climb to the top of the mountain. And so we got some good kind of motorsport focused things coming the rest of the year through the club. And I'm looking forward to reporting on as much of it as I can.
Aaron, thank you so much. To everybody watching and listening, thank you. As a reminder, be sure to visit AudiClubNA.org for more stories, regular news posts about Audi's Formula One journey, everything else that the brand is doing. If you're not yet a member of the world's largest Audi community, check out the description below in this podcast. We've got more information there. You can learn all about the club. Aaron, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining. And for everyone else, thank you. And we'll see you next time.